Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Yes, Ebony, we can hear you.
Yeah, good, great. Thank you very much.
You are
Okay,
welcome.
yeah. I'm Ebony Agbo, Associate Professor in the English Department of Université de Lomé. We are pleased to welcome you all to this discussion this week of discussion over the topic relating the digital humanities. On behalf of the research team named Deux I'm glad to welcome all of you. And without wasting time, I will hand over the floor to Jacqueline to take the lead and then manage or introduce the guests that we have online. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to everyone, all of our guests that are online and in person. Thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor to be with you today, and I would like to begin by expressing my sincere thanks to the U.S. Embassy in Lomé, particularly the Department of Public Affairs, and to the faculty of the Department of Anglophone Studies at the University of Lomé for the invitation and thoughtful preparation and the care extended since my arrival here in Togo. I am truly grateful to be here and in conversation and community with such an engaged academic community. My name is Dr. Jacqueline Cofield, and I am here as a Fulbright specialist committed to cross-continental intellectual exchange and to expanding how knowledge is recognized, practiced, and shared across global academic contexts. We are now in week 2 of the Fulbright Digital Humanities Speaker Series after beginning last week with Foundations, where we talked about archives, memory, access, and ethics. This week turns our attention to pedagogical innovation, how those foundational commitments take shape in practice, teaching, and knowledge making. Today's session, Embodied Knowledge as Digital Method, invites us to think differently about where knowledge lives. It asks us to consider the body, not as metaphor or supplement, but as the site of inquiry. Movement, rhythm, sensation, and performance become ways of thinking, remembering, and transmitting knowledge. This conversation is especially important for graduate students because it opens up methodological possibilities around beyond text and platforms. And it resonates deeply with African and diasporic knowledge traditions where embodiment, artistry, and communal practice have long functioned as legitimate and rigorous forms of knowing. Today, we are honored to be joined by 2 scholar practitioners whose work powerfully demonstrates how embodied, sensory, and arts-based practices operate as knowledge systems within and alongside digital humanities. Winston A. Banyans Jr. is an interdisciplinary artist scholar, choreographer, and educator whose work explores embodied knowledge, performance, and abstraction as living archives of cultural memory, particularly within Black Atlantic and diasporic contexts. His practice sits at the intersection of social anthropology, dance studies, and digital humanities, and through his organization, True Culture and Arts, LLC, he engages embodied and arts-based methodologies as research, pedagogy, and digital archive practice. Dr. Awele Peace Ikam is a Nigerian dance therapist, choreographer, and lecturer in the Department of Theater Arts at the University of Benin. Her work connects African indigenous dance, mental health, and social change, bringing together dance therapy, theater, music, poetry, and movement improvisation to support healing, women's empowerment, and community well-being. Her practice offers a powerful model of embodied knowledge grounded in African-centered epistemologies and care-based pedagogy. Without further ado, first of all, I want to say thank you so much to our two honored guests today for taking time to present. We have faculty and graduate students from the University of Lomé in audience, as well as members of Embassy and Lomé artistic and cultural community joining us. So thank you so much for your time. And we will start with Winston, and then Dr. Ikam will go afterwards, and then we'll have a Q&A. So I encourage everyone to definitely take notes and to be thinking about your questions that you may want to ask afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cofield. Good morning or good afternoon to everyone. And I'd like to thank you, Dr. Cofield, for curating this series and providing space and all the work that you do to help support this discussion, and also being in conversation with Dr. Akeem and presenting along with you today. Thank you very much. My session title is the Embodied Knowledge, Anthropological Methods in Digital Humanities. And today, I'd like us to think about embodied knowledge and how movement and sound function as archives, and how those archives then enter the digital and institutional spaces. But before I say anything more about that, I'd like to begin with less than half a minute of movement. You won't be moving, I'm not dancing. I actually have a video, an excerpt of a performance by Nora Chippemer, and I'd like to present that to you guys. And as you watch this, I'd like you to understand that I'm not presenting it to you so that you can necessarily start doing analysis and start interpretation, but really just kind of take note of the things that's registering with you before language comes into play, before analysis comes into play. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. And here we go. Okay. To come back to you. So I would love to hear from one or two individuals about what it is that you can share that you saw, right? What are the things that you saw that you noticed from this excerpt of this performance? And if someone could provide an opportunity for any individuals to speak.
You stand up and then please stand and you speak a bit louder.
Okay, right now.
Just a second. Please, Sir Winston, can you hear the person speaking in the back?
I can, it's a little low.
Okay, please move ahead, move forward here. Yeah.
If you speak slower, because this is the sound system.
This one is the microphone here, but Come close, please. Yes, speak.
Okay, what I've just seen is someone who was performing dancing moves. It could have been a lady or a man. I was not able to distinguish between the features properly, but the likelihood of a lady is high.
Okay.
So yeah, so I saw dancing movements and balancing and standing and art of balancing, because I could see at a point the person is standing on the heels, which is quite a difficult movement or a difficult stand. But anyway, so I could see a degree of art in the movement I've seen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have to, is there one more person that would like to share anything that they notice?
Yes, please. Speak from there. Speak. Go ahead.
So, from the video, though I could not hear anything, I could say that the person was passionate about what he was doing. I could see the man. I could see he was giving a kind of performance about the culture. It is clear that it is an African culture. I can see he's passionate about this. It is giving a kind of message. The darkness, meaning he's doing it somehow in a kind of shadowing.
Okay.
So that's briefly what I noticed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing what you noticed. And so with Embodied Archives, this is the things that we do, right? We're looking at movement in space, if we're looking specifically at dance or any kind of movement in space, and we're identifying and witnessing what are the things that we're seeing before we start to analyze what it may be. So as Dr. Caulfield mentioned, the work of Embodied Archives is not as metaphors, but it's as methods, right? It's a way of knowing that emerges through repetition, through sensation, and attention before they become articulated as knowledge. I've had the opportunity to look at specifically dance from a number of different perspectives. And one as a performer and as a choreographer, learning dance techniques, dance styles, being in art spaces, being in spaces of presenting that work, but also working with communities, creating programs where we're using dance as an opportunity to connect communities across generations and across ethnicities, and understanding the place that dance and how dance functions within a community context, separate from a presentation process. And then also in education and academia. So having the opportunity to teach undergrad students at Mason Grove School for the Arts at Rutgers University, teaching in K through 12 educational spaces, teaching in dance studios where it's open level. So you would get students from the professional dancer, maybe a professional dancer in that specific form or another form, all the way to the individual that just needs to move. They need movement in their life. They don't want to go to the gym, and they enjoy feeling connected to community and music in spaces like dance studios. And so I've had the opportunity to be able to look at Black Atlantic arts through those different perspectives. But most specifically, I want to talk about in the educational space. I actually would like to share with you a moment that I had where I was teaching a unit on second line dancing. And second line dancing comes from New Orleans specifically. And normally when I'm teaching cultural dances or social dances, I usually teach students a couple of steps, put it into some phrase work. We manipulate the phrase work as we're dancing. I introduce them to the music. I give lectures. I give them historical context and information. But what I started to do with the second line, instead of doing it that way, I started to not give any information at all and to see what happens. So I had a freshman class in high school, and I played the music. I didn't even tell them the title of the music. I didn't say anything about where it's from, what kind of music it is. Didn't give any historical or cultural explanation at all. I just had them listen to the music. They sat on the floor in the dance studio. They listened to the music. We had discussions about what it is that they heard. What is it that they're sensing? What is it that, how did that particular music make them feel? And through those discussions, they identified many different aspects of the music itself. And from that, I tasked them with coming up with some phrase work, like you're creating a dance. And I was able to observe them in their process of creating a dance based off of this music, not knowing anything about it. And what was so interesting about that is the music started off slow, and then it had a slow intro, and then it picked up, and the beat dropped, if you will, and it got faster. And they definitely chose to start from that space, right? That was the space that they felt more comfortable in. And they started to do some steps individually, discussing, talking about what they liked, putting it together, and then they ended up coming back to the beginning. Someone had an idea about what they could do during that slow intro. And to share a little bit, what they decided to do is simulate being off stage, so being on the sides and the wings, and then coming out to mimicking a rhythm that's in the intro, but coming out as individuals, kind of looking around in the space, noticing each other as community. The beat drops, they dance in unison as community. And so that was really, really interesting to me because they were generating these phrases based solely on the sound that was produced and how their bodies reacted to it. Their weight, the timing, their impulse, the initiation of the movement. And what I started to notice is that what they were creating had a lot of similarities to the cadence and the rhythmic logic of traditional second line music. That's what was coming out of their bodies without having any kind of information at all. So the archive through bodily attunement, right? It's the archive through bodily attunement, not instruction, right? It's what the body is, the knowledge that the body is holding, that is kind of revealing itself. Separate and apart from getting any additional information or any instruction on what it is that they were doing. That moment made clear to me that the archive was already operating, and it was operating before it was named. And then also I started to think about embodied knowledge and how it's not a singular thing. It's produced through relation between bodies across time and through shared conditions. And that took me to another moment when I started to connect the dance style of krump that came out of Los Angeles with Haitian patois. And so krump dance came out of Los Angeles. There was a documentary called Rise. I saw that documentary. It was very interesting seeing the young adults, young Black girls and boys in their community, which was a marginalized, oppressed community, right? But how their body's response to being in this situation and being among systems that's trying to hold them in the situation. And years later, I started to learn Afro-Haitian dance, and one of them is Patois. And in my research, one of the things I learned about myself as a performer and learning to perform dances, I was always interested in the historical and cultural and social and economic and political aspects and things that were going on that kind of supported the development of this movement or the movement was in response to it. And so Patois was one of the dances that was part of this community grounding that happened in Haiti as part of the Haitian Revolution. There's a lot of arts that was a part of how these different ethnic groups that were enslaved and brought to what we now call Haiti, how they came together as community and worked together against that force of colonization and oppression. And I noticed that a connection between Crump and Patois. I noticed a connection in the initiation of the movement from the core. There is a mobilized intensity to an urgency, confrontation as an embodied response to what it is that they're experiencing. Then with further research, I started to put together and understood this kind of connection between Haiti and the United States by way of New Orleans. And so at the time of the Haitian Revolution, there were individuals who left Saint-Domingue at that time, went to Cuba, and then from Cuba came to New Orleans. That whole landmass at the time was being governed by Spain. And so there actually was a ferry that used to go between New Orleans and Cuba at that time. And that was like in the 1800s, the early 1800s. And so that was the beginning of feeling like, okay, I'm tracing how this embodied knowledge goes from the island of Saint-Domingue that's going to become Haiti, goes to Cuba, comes over to New Orleans, and starts to live and grow in New Orleans, right? And how that embodied knowledge then migrated to that space. Then when I was looking at the Great Migrations in the United States, noticing that the second Great Migration was Black individuals, Black people from the South going west, right? And so a large percentage of individuals may have left New Orleans and traveled west to Los Angeles as one of the points in California. And that's the second migration. So looking at that, pulling back and saying, okay, this embodied knowledge traveled and it traveled geographies. It went from Saint-Domingue to Cuba to New Orleans, traveling west, possibly traveling west to Los Angeles, resurfacing under the same kind of conditions, slightly different, but the intentionality is the same in this other dance called Crump. Right? So now we're talking about 200 years, right? The early 1800s, from the early 1800s where the Haitian Revolution happened to the early 2000s where Crump is coming up and is being documented and is being seen and is part of the community there in Los Angeles itself. So why this matters? This matters because it's thinking like, okay, this embodied knowledge, this archive, it's not fixed. It's not coming from an origin point. It's circulatory in its process. It travels across geographies. It travels across timelines, across generations of individuals and people. So essentially, what's being transmitted isn't choreography, but it's a way of responding to pressure. Yeah, the pressure that enslaved and free Black people in Saint-Domingue that they felt from colonization, the pressure that young Black boys and girls in Los Angeles felt from systematic oppression, economic oppression in that place, right? Resonating in that same way. So if embodied knowledge is relational and mobile, then digital platforms cannot simply just store the thing, it has to translate it, all right? And it has to provide an opportunity to figure out how to work alongside the body archive, because one doesn't replace the other. They're working in concert with each other. So from the second line example, it shows how digital documentation, video, annotation, reflection, how it can support a return and analysis, but it does not produce the knowledge itself. The knowledge emerged in the body. And from the Crump and Petwell connection, that demonstrated how digital archives can surface patterns, even when the historical record might be incomplete or not documented in a textual kind of format or be fragmented in any particular way. And once we all accept that some aspects of embodied archives exceed digital capture, we can then design platforms or systems and ways to work alongside the practice of this embodied knowledge itself. So the question for digital humanities is not necessarily how to capture these practices, right? But now that we have and are thinking about this understanding of embodied knowledge and the body as an archive, and the body as a technological space in and of itself, when we're using these outward technological devices, not just how to capture these practices perfectly, but how to build structures that allow them to remain relational to each other, right? And also thinking about not only what it is that we gain from documenting and archiving these embodied knowledge in a digital space, but also what are the things that we lose? What are the things that can't translate into that particular archive? And how do we make sure and ensure that that aspects of the body knowledge is not lost in any particular way? So much of embodied knowledge, in closing, much of embodied knowledge, it's already part of what we do, what we all do. Embodied knowledge is part of what we all do, whether we recognize it and we name it or not. It is there. But my hope is that digital humanities can remain a space where those forms of knowledge stays in dialogue, where it's acknowledged, where it's identified, it stays in dialogue with the digital archive, and understanding that one doesn't replace the other, but they work together in concert with each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Winston.
Speak from
Now,
here.
Dr. Ikem.
I think she can't hear you. Can I speak for them?
Oh, I can go ahead.
Yes, please, you can go ahead.
Okay, great. I'm going to use my other system. Share the screen. I'm going to use my other system and then just mute myself on this. I'm going to share my screen here. And can we see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great.
Yeah.
Yes. So, like I was earlier introduced, I am Dr. Awele Peace Ikem from the Department of Theatre Arts. I'm a dance therapist and I've worked with various communities for different dance therapy sessions, communities of combatant mobile police officers, students for suicide awareness, children, and then people living with disability. You know, at the heart of this discussion is the concept of embodied knowledge. Now, my topic here that I intend to discuss is dance therapy as embodied knowledge, movement and sound as tools for healing and learning. This is the idea that our bodies are not just vessels for our brains, but are active participants in understanding the world. Our body, the movements we make, dance movements, they are they are the language of silence and the language of expression of the human body. The human body is the instrument, but the movement itself is a living archive, a living memory of the human body. And so what dance therapy does is to work with the human body, mind, and possibly the spirit of a person. And so in many African traditions, movement and sound carry deep cultural memories. As we move, we tell our stories, we tell our histories, we tell our culture, we tell our tradition, we tell who we are as we move. And then when we are moving to remember who we are as well. And in my professional practice, I have seen dance act as a bridge where words have failed. For individuals processing trauma, the body often remembers what the mind tries to forget. Now, dance therapy allows for the release of these somatic memories. There are a lot of things we don't want to express with words, with language, but what movement does is to help us express ourselves without necessarily saying a word. So movement is the language of the body also. Movement is the language of silence. As we move, we express, we tell what is within us, what is within our inner mind. And so movement is a speech in space. In West Africa, our history is traditionally recorded in the body through dance, gestures, and oral rhythm rather than on paper. I refer to these as living archives. These archives are passed from body to body. I'm going to give an example. In Africa, or in Nigeria particularly, nobody teaches you how to cook by telling you, take 2 teaspoons of salt and 2 teaspoons of sugar or whatever. But we keep putting the salt till our ancestors tell us is enough. So we learn by participation. We learn by interaction. Nobody really gives you an instruction. There is something that is very popular amongst us in Nigeria, especially the Igbos. It's called apprenticeship. You want to learn a new skill. You do not go to an organization and you are told, oh, in the morning you need to put these files aside, you need to do this and do that. You learn by watching, you learn by participating and interaction. So in this apprenticeship method, you go, a boss takes his boy, they call them the boy, to the shop, and he watches his boss sell, negotiate, take up contracts, and he doesn't really necessarily need to tell his boy that, oh, you have to see Mr. A move to the left or move to the right. But what the boy does, he gives 5 to 10 years of service to his boss, and in the process of doing that, he learns by participating and by interacting. So we as Africans, we pass down knowledge from body to body. We don't write on paper per se, to say, okay. And like I said earlier, we cook without necessarily having a written instruction. We just keep putting until our ancestors say it's enough. And guess what? We never make a mistake with the amount of salt that goes into the soup. I don't know how I learned that, but well, that's how we cook. And so the challenge for us as researchers is, how do we respect a form of knowledge that is felt and performed rather than read? So over time, I have realized that people learn faster. People learn faster by participation. And that is what dance movement therapy is based on. Dance movement therapy is based on participation, relationship between the dance therapist and the participants or the clients, if you care to use that. So there is this participation, and as the dance therapist relates with his patients or participants or clients, there is the transfer of expression. the therapists begin to understand the participants and begin to know the right movements to put in to counter the movements of the participants. Now, this is where technology enters.
Dr. Ikam, I think we lost you.